Initiating download. Podcast download complete. It's the SuperPowHer podcast.
Dia Direct, the fly and fab go-to girlfriend, is all about bringing you interviews
With celebrities
information
and her super friends.
and inspiration that take your life to the next level.
Dia Direct gets real
She doesn't just interview, she goes in. Dia Direct makes a difference.
with SuperPowHer.
Hey y'all, it's Dia Direct. Welcome back to the SuperPowHer podcast. You know, this is the place where superfly women and the men that love us testify, right? So we're always about the testimony. And today, we have a really special show because, you know, I used to do the man whisperer. So now we're mixing things up because now we do the women and then we did the men. But now, today, we're doing something even more special. We're doing a couple who is all about being the change that they want to see, and they're using both their glory and their story to make the difference. So we are excited about having both Sherice Brown and NFL player, Hall of Fame, Mr. Man, Tim Brown. But his wife is the woman.
Amen.
Okay, and she is a founding member, okay,
Yes.
of the Off the Field Players Wives Association,
Yes.
and you are also chairing the Big Brothers, Big Sisters
Black Tie Gala.
fundraiser this year in Dallas. But you know, all of us, even nationally, we need to make sure we get involved. So listen,
Yes.
welcome to the
Yes.
show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh yeah, for
Definitely
sure.
Appreciate it.
Listen, because this is really what it's all about. Because I think when people look at your lives,
Yes.
they, you know, especially with social media, and you people only show the best parts of their lives. And I
course.
mean, honestly, why wouldn't they,
Right,
right?
right.
But people still make judgments, and they start to feel like, okay, everybody else has it going on but me.
right.
And so people might look at your life and think it's all just, you know, roses. And I know that's not true,
No.
because we're all human.
Definitely.
And you and I had a chance to talk too. So I have a lot of questions, but I really want to start with this part.
Okay.
What is your testimony, Sherice?
Ooh, that's a big one. So my testimony begins, Dia, and I know I've kind of shared a little bit of that with you. You know, been so blessed to be able to, first off, be married to such an awesome man of God, and I give all glory to God for him, because my story, I come from a little girl growing up in LA. You know, I had my mom, I had my brother, you know, very close-knit, small family. And I am truly a product of child molestation, starting at the age of 3. And my testimony really begins with that, because for me to share who I am today, I have to reflect back on that. Pain, definitely pain, but I know it's been part of my purpose, and how I've been able to just go out and, you know, share with others what I went through, but where God has just came in and been such a huge part of just guiding me and directing me down that right path, and not me veering, going down that wrong path. But I know it's been because of the grace of God.
Okay, so powerful testimony.
Yes.
But how do you know, like 3? Like, how do you know?
I remember.
Really?
Yes, I do. I remember detailed. That's a bad part, because sometimes I would love to forget it, but it is with me. I definitely have done counseling, you know, probably not extensively, but most of my healing is coming from really the Lord, and just really starting to share my testimony. For a long time, I didn't speak about it. I just didn't talk about it. I thought if you keep it all inside and never tell anyone, no one would know my scars. But the healing is definitely starting to come from really just revealing, you know, what I went through.
So, you know, I often share my testimony, and everybody has one.
Yes.
And I know, and for me, when I start talking about going from, you know, being Miss Black USA
Yes.
to the next year taking pills after I got married the first time, I had a lot of shame.
Yes, yes.
And it
definitely.
really took me a long time because of who I thought people thought I was, or who I
Right.
wanted to perceive. I didn't perceive myself as that person.
Right.
So I know that I got such a breakthrough when I finally was just able to share all of me.
Right.
In that part, and it definitely did lead to my purpose. When did you decide now is the time and this is why? How did you find that moment?
You know, it really came from other people.
Okay.
I will have to say that I have a good girlfriend who knew my story, knew my background, and she asked me to speak. And I know we'll go into talking about what I do at Super Bowl, but my first time ever speaking out was at an event for teen moms at a Super Bowl event. And she said, Sherice, just share your story. Just come up and share your story. And most of the time when people perceive you, like you said, they see the outside. They really don't know the inside. And after I got through sharing for the first time, I thought, wow, what a relief, because it just was something I did not talk about. Maybe, you know, I of course share with my husband and, you know, very close friends, but I didn't really openly express it at all. So that was my first time talking about it. I actually shared it my second time here at the Hayes, I think it was called the Hayes, I can't remember, but a mentor center. It was a detention for girls who had just a bad background, with whether it was stealing, prostitution, drugs, everything. Went and shared my testimony there, and one young lady came up and she said to me, she said, is it okay if I touch you? And they don't let you really kind of touch them because it is a detention center. And she said, my story is I have a baby by my father. And I'm just in tears, and she's in tears. She said, but when I saw you when you walked in, I was wondering, what could you possibly say to me that would be relatable to what I'm going through? And after I spoke and I said, I could have gone down that same path, if not for the grace of God, that would have been my story. Who's to say I wouldn't have gone down that same path? Or even the pregnancy, of course I was much younger than she was. I wasn't at the age where I could get pregnant. But I can go into my story of how that molestation affected my births and even my marriage. You know, it takes a toll on you completely. You know, issues and insecurities, what you were saying, just someone may see the outside, but they don't know the inside and what pain that you're really dealing with. And like I said, followed me through, even my pregnancies were preterm, both pregnancies. I had to go on bed rest because of the damage that was done prior to, you know, me becoming a woman. So me sharing that was really how I start feeling like, okay, maybe I can help someone. And then at Super Bowl, after the first time I shared, I have a good friend, Mr. Kirk Franklin, and we had all gone to lunch, and he's like, sis, where you been? And I said, oh, I had to go and speak. And I said, you know what, I shared my testimony for the first time. And he said,
did you feel naked when you did that?
I did.
It's like, it's very, very vulnerable.
I was very vulnerable. I really felt like, wow, I really just did this. And he said, well, what is your testimony? And he's known me for years, and he said, I would have never, ever thought that that was your story. And I said, a lot of people say that. He said, because to look at you, you don't seem like you've been through anything.
But guess what? There is no real look.
There is no
That's
real look.
That's the thing. There is no look. What does that even mean?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because what's going on the outside and what's going on the inside, not always the same.
Not the same.
And we can all cover it up and make it look however we want to,
Definitely.
you know? And so that's a powerful story. Yeah. And I would imagine that it's kind of full circle, right? Because here you are chairing the Big Brother, Big Sister event here in Dallas. When is it coming up?
It's October the 13th.
Okay.
And that's going to be a great event. I would love for you, like I said, I want you to come and
I
attend,
would love to.
because I was able to attend a couple of the pre-events, and it was just amazing to see all these young children there with their bigs. I want to say mentors, but they really are called a big. And they were just in awe at the event. I mean, you talk about the different.
So the kids are there at the event?
The kids are there at the
that's
event.
Great.
They may not have all of them at the gala, but they will have some, and particular ones that have graduated and gone on to get into colleges, or some that have graduated from college. I mean, that's the main purpose there, is to come alongside these children, so you can be that mentor to come alongside them and help them through, you know, high school or you know, going on into college, and you can start that process. I know we were talking about it. It takes 4 to 6 weeks for you to become a big, but they go through a very intensive background check just to ensure the safety of the kids.
I just think it's so full circle, though, because what you went through,
Yes.
I know a lot of those kids
Oh, yes.
also have similar stories.
Definitely.
And you never know how God will use
Right.
your life.
Right.
And now here you are in a situation
Yeah.
raising funds for a little girl like yourself.
Exactly.
And I remember
Exactly.
growing up, I always wanted to have a big sister.
Yes.
I'm an only child.
Okay.
But my cousin was in the Big Brother Big Sister program.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And she came from a very compromised situation, and they chose her.
Wow.
So for whatever reason, whatever program she was already in, she got to be in the program. And I actually was a little jealous because I just wanted that guidance.
Of course.
I wanted somebody to kind of show me the way,
Definitely.
So I'm definitely going to look into
love that.
I commit to looking into
Thank
how
you.
I can become
Thank you.
a big sister.
I love it. Thank
And
you.
I'm excited about what you're doing, and I want to
you.
talk more about how that your testimony
Okay.
and your story, how that translates even into marriage. And so when we come back,
Okay.
we're going to talk to Mr. Hall of Fame himself, Mr. Tim Brown. So just stay tuned right here on the SuperPowHer Podcast.
We'll be back with more SuperPowHer with your host, Dia Direct.
Have you ever been in a relationship, personally or professionally, that has failed, and it made you feel lost and discouraged? Well, what if I told you that you can literally leverage every single painful situation and make your pain pay you back? After all, it cost you something. Just like with a bank account, you want to get some interest off of everything that you've been through. All the tears, all the time, all the effort. Make it pay you back. Use it. Leverage it. Check out my Amazon #1 bestseller, Failure is Fuel, and experience how my testimony can fuel your life to the next level.
We're back where Superfly women testify. It's the SuperPowHer Podcast with your host, Dia Direct.
Hey y'all, we're back. We are back with the Browns, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, but not Tyler Perry Brown, okay? So Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here. I'm excited about what you're doing and co-chairing the Big Brother Big Sister program, and I've had a chance to follow you and see some of your interviews. So I know you too have a very powerful testimony. But I gotta just ask you because you seem so subdued and put together. But I've also seen some Raider fans. So I'm like, I'm not seeing where I don't know where this all goes because are you just like
Well, let me just
you
put
got
it
your
to
best
you,
face on right now? What?
the way my dad used to say, he used to tell my mom that he may act like you off the field, but on the field he acts like me.
See?
So I try and keep all that for that time. But yeah, I mean, Raider Nation is if you're a Raider fan, you're a special person. I'll just put it that way. That's being nice.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like some special juice or something. I don't know, but I love it. But what's really interesting is, first of all, for those who just don't know, you guys have been married for how long?
21 years.
21 years. Do you agree? Is it? You both know it's 21 years, right?
It's 21 years. Yes.
We do know that.
We do know that, for
We
sure.
may not know how we met, but we know it's 21 years.
4 kids, and you met at a wedding.
We met at one of my good friends' wedding.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, how did you get to the point where you knew, okay, this is the person for me?
I literally probably knew that in 3 weeks that she was the person for me. I think I told her a couple times that I loved her before I met her. And I say that because I knew what I wanted. I knew the look. I knew how I needed her to act. I knew all those things. I mean, and I say 3 weeks because we met, and I think about 3 weeks later, we had an event. One of my boys was having a birthday party or something, and she came up for it. Every girl I had dated before would lock on to me and would stay right by my side, and I'm like, I'm going, oh, don't leave me. This girl, 10 minutes after being in the place, I'm trying to find her.
Right.
I'm trying to find her where she is, But it was a beautiful thing for me because I knew that she was a confident woman and she didn't need me to be there patting her on the back the whole time. So, I mean, that and, she was the first woman that ever cooked me a meal. I'm in L.A., so, in L.A.,
I lived in LA for a long time.
I
Can't tell you how many meals I cooked.
So, but there was, and most importantly, she was a godly woman. When I met her, she was finishing up 6 months.
A Raiders player wanted a godly woman.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You know, I met her just in time or at the right time because
How old were you guys?
I was 29, about to turn 30, and she was
26, turning 27.
And, you know, for me, I had just gotten saved like 2 weeks prior before I met her.
Why'd you get saved, Tim?
It was time. I mean, I just, you know,
Tell the truth.
you can't do it no more. You know what I mean?
What
That
happened,
nonsense.
Come on, you know this is the time to testify now. What happened? Tell the truth. I need to
Well,
know.
it wasn't
Yes.
anything, you know, too traumatic, but, you know, for me, I had been, you know, born and raised in church here in Dallas, you know, knowing what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to do it, and I was probably doing the direct opposite of that for most of my time in California, but God was dealing with me, and I knew it, and, you know, I mean, I got to the point where I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror because I knew that I wasn't doing what God wanted me to do. And, you know, so it took a couple events to happen. And, you know, in June 26, 1996, I'll never forget it, you know. In the middle of the night, I rolled out of bed and, you know, asked God to save me.
Yes.
And, you know, I think from that time on, I met her July the 7th or July the 6th, you know, so.
You needed a wife.
I always joke with her and say,
Listen.
"Hey, you lucky I met you when I met you 2 weeks prior to run that game on you, girl." But
Really wouldn't have.
It wouldn't have worked?
No.
Oh, so
Not
you were
at
a good
all.
Christian girl.
Yes, but I still was very smart. You know,
So
I knew
anyway,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, so you know, I think from that standpoint, you know, when I met her, you know, I think I told Chester actually before I left the wedding, I had to leave
That's
early.
the friend that introduced you
Yes.
guys? Okay.
And Chester has since passed.
Oh, okay.
You know, I mean, so to me, that just made, you know, he was an angel. I see him as an angel, and one part of his mission on this earth was to connect us. But, you know, I told him the night before I left that if I'd have met her 6 months prior, we'd been having a double wedding that night.
See.
So, but, you know, so we were engaged in 6 months and married 6 months after that. So, you know, I think, you know, I knew that she was the woman that God wanted me to be with, and there was no reason to be having a 3-year, you know, engagement or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
You know, they say, you know, because a lot of women, you know, especially now, I know it's a different time or whatever, but I still find it to be true, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you don't have to chase a man because when a man knows, he knows.
he knows.
Exactly.
And you
Yeah.
won't have to guess. Like if you find yourself in a situation, you're trying to overanalyze.
Right.
What does he really mean? Do you think he really likes me?
Yes.
Then
Well, you
you're
know,
already doing
I
too much.
I think
So
the most
true.
important
So true.
thing is, you know, the scariest thing for a man is a woman who's trying to get married. You know, that's a scary
Yeah.
situation to be around. And
Speak on it. Say why.
I've been around that situation where, you know, I was dating a lady who was a couple years older, and she wanted to get married bad. And every conversation led to, you know, are you thinking about it? You know, and it's like, you know,
turn
can
off.
can I like get to know you for a little while first? You know, I mean,
Pressure.
and you know, and I think from that situation you learn that, you know, that little desperate type thing is not something you ever want to be a part of.
So I'm curious because I've talked to a number of women who have been with ballers or men who are in the limelight, and sometimes it can be a challenge in terms of things that you have to deal with. And so, because people see what they see, you know, the good parts, the high life, but I don't know, is there another side that people don't really understand?
Yeah, and I would have to say that I honestly didn't have to go through those things. You know, I have some friends that have had to deal with that, where, you know, the girls are coming up slipping the numbers, they're trying to get the guys, you know, to get their husband's attention, and, you know, they've been down those paths. I didn't have to go down those paths because, and I attribute that to my husband and the way that he carried himself. That was never an issue for us, which I'm grateful. I'm truly grateful, because and I was that person that, you know, that listening ear on the other end where I could hear about, well, I was, you know, privy to hear what the husbands were doing, or Tim and I would be at a game and we'd see the husbands with someone else that was not the wife. So it was always, you know, I would ask Tim, I was like, babe, what is it, what causes men to cheat? And what was your answer? Because it always resonated with me when you would say,
Well, I don't remember exactly what I said, but when it comes to cheating, I mean, these guys just, if it's available, then they're going to do it, for the most part,
Yeah.
So, but, I think that's where your faith has to be real.
And that's what he would talk about.
I told her, that she would never have to worry about me doing things because I would always love God more than I love her.
That's good.
And, initially she didn't like, God, what you mean? I'm second fiddle. Yeah, you second fiddle to God, baby. Come on now.
Right.
I get it.
But it made sense.
Because
Yeah.
I knew, even at that time, that there was going to be a day that she was going to make me mad.
Yeah.
And if I used that to go out and do something, then, but if I loved her more than I loved God, then that would happen. But, God is never going to give you the okay to do that.
No.
And, it's accessibility, especially now with the guys making the money that they're making now, unfortunately, it's a lot harder for these guys to be right because the money puts them in a position that they think they can do whatever they want.
Okay, but it's like you can say faith and I love God, which and I know you're sincere when you say it, but in terms of tools, right? Because temptation is still temptation, even when you love God. I mean, if before you got married to Sherice, this was your lifestyle, right? And now you're married and you have a heart for God, I get. But there are also those compromising situations and things that are just there. So was there anything that you did differently?
Well, let me tell you, and the little incident that she brought up.
Oh, that I was going to share with you.
So
Yes.
when I was flying back from her Christmas party, there was a young lady, beautiful young lady, so beautiful that I was like, I had a newspaper. I was like, let me just cover my head, and it's only a 45-minute flight to Oakland. I can make it.
Right.
And this young lady was a flight attendant, and she ended up sitting in front of me. And this was the day when Southwest had those seats at the front with face. That's how old I am, I guess. But
You just aged yourself.
and she sat down and she pulled the paper down, and she said, "What are you doing when you get off this plane?"
So she sat there on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, hour. And all I can get out, and this is when I knew I had God in me, because the man in me was like,
Right.
Right, human.
But this is when I knew I had God in me, and I said to her, "There's no doubt in my mind what we would be doing when we get off this plane, but I met somebody 6 months ago, and it's because of that's not going to happen." And she said, "You have a girlfriend?" I said, "Oh yes, I do have a girlfriend, but who I met was Jesus Christ." And and at some point in your life, and I tell people when I speak in men's conference, I tell them all the time, sometimes you have to recognize who the devil is.
He gonna look good too.
And sometimes the devil is about 5'5", 125 pounds with that long black hair.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you have to recognize, and at that moment, if that young lady, and she did, she continued on. You have to recognize that she's an evil person. If I tell her
Or she's being used.
Or
right,
she's-
yeah.
yeah.
So, and I think from that standpoint, so for me, I'm always quick to bring my wife up. I'm always quick to bring up God. And if those two things don't get people to stand back a little bit, then you're dealing with somebody who just really doesn't care about you or themselves or anything. They just want to do whatever and move on. So, I mean, I think over the years, now I'm to the point where my reputation precedes me. People know when I'm coming, it's like, stay away from that brother because he's going to start talking about Jesus Christ. And so I don't
That's
necessarily
true,
have to
though.
worry about, people coming to
That's
me and
true.
approaching me in that way anymore. So.
Yeah.
But that's also a part of ministry, because I'm sure other guys who are struggling, because you stand up, and they probably have a mentor or somebody that they can talk to. And, again, even with you all being involved with the Big Brothers, Big Sisters, even that kind of testimony is powerful for young boys to know that there's more than one way to think about manhood.
No doubt.
And self-control and character.
Right.
Must be super
And,
important.
when you're an athlete, it's hard to think of anything else except being a great athlete. And I think that's why you have so many athletes who have a difficult time. We're sort of living in the era where everybody is saved, everybody love God, but loving God and living for God is something totally different.
Totally different.
But I think when you're an athlete, it's so hard for people to really give God the credit because, I'm the one getting up at 5 a.m. working. I'm the one watching my diet. I'm the one doing all these incredible things, making people miss
a lot of
on the field.
eyes.
Yeah, and so it becomes impossible for people to understand that. And I'll just say this real quick. One of my stories that I use, when I was 35, I became the oldest man in the history of the NFL to return a punt for a touchdown. And it's a record that will stand forever because nobody's going to be dumb enough to return kicks at 35 years old anymore. So I'll have that record, forever. And I can remember, after that game, thinking, man, I am the man. 30, I never, but that's what I'm feeling.
And there's all that adrenaline.
Right. And the next morning, when we're watching film, it's like God said to me, watch what I did for you. Right? And he was like, what you going to see on this film is what I've been doing for you your whole life. Wow. Making ways for you. Amen. All you have to do is take the road. I didn't even get touched. I went 89 yards for a touchdown, get touched. Yeah. And you see my guys just making these incredible blocks, doing this and doing that. And that's what we have to understand. We think it's us, but it's God doing this for us. That's right. And until we understand that or mature enough to recognize that and speak on it, then, unfortunately, a lot of things that you talk about are going to continue to happen.
But most of us, myself included, have to fall down really hard.
True.
Before you look back up, because ego will make you feel like part of it is being proud of yourself too, especially if you know where you've come from or you know the effort that you've put in. Right. And then there's how people respond to you based on your position. True. Right? And so it's easy to get puffed up and caught up in yourself. So if you didn't have to have that, I mean, that's the grace of God.
I really believe that God understands that about us, and I think there are always things that He puts in our lives to always remind us. Remember when you were here? Right. There's stories we may never tell.
That's why it's a testimony.
We may never tell somebody's story because
you can tell me one. She's like,
well, I'll tell you because I'm not, because of way, we had a situation with our home just this year that didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. You know what I mean? But it turned out probably to be the best thing that ever happened to us. You know what I mean? And people would look at us and go, "Well, how did you get in this or that?" And that's a whole 2-hour show that we, But the fact of the matter is, we ended up in a situation, had a chance, whatever, could have, would have, should have, this and that, but it didn't turn out probably the way we thought we wanted it to. But looking back on it now, it's like you get out of the situation, you go, I can breathe. Let's look at this. Let's look at the future. And now we have. I'm dealing with the company that's looking at building us, for free, a brand new place. You know what I mean? So, but and then we have all these other incredible things. But I think, we will always remember that moment. You know what I mean? So there's no reason for us to ever be like looking down on people or to ever think that,
That's
because,
good.
We were there once and we could be there again, no matter what the situation we find ourselves in.
I'm so glad you shared that. You know why? Because recently, I sold my home, right? And I was really holding on to it because there's an identity to stuff,
absolutely,
right? Yes. And it was very emotional for me to let it go. Yes. And I did an interview. You talked about Kirk. Yes. I did an interview with Tammy Franklin, and we were kind of just talking about in marriage, coming together. And I realized that I was still holding on to my old identity and how it made me feel. Right. And you know that song where he talks about, I've got a seed in the ground. Anyway, God kind of showed me that He used my house as it was a seed. And now it's time for the seed to actually pay off for you. It's for it to manifest. Let it go so you can go into your new season. Yes. And in that struggle, though, it was like God said to me, "You act like this is the best I can do."
Right.
Yes. Why are you holding on to, or when you worry about what somebody else is thinking? You're so busy holding on to what was that you don't even realize what is holding you down, and you need to be released, right? So that you can now be free enough to flow into your next level. But also sometimes God also said, you've been holding on to your old testimony of what used to be and what he freed you from a long time ago. Sometimes he got to make that thing fresh.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
And it was
That's right.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's always your testimony
Exactly.
that leads you to the next level. So you know there's somebody who's dealing with a home situation right now.
Absolutely.
And they will look at, and God will use people of a certain stature, and he'll use you for the glory, right? For the bigger picture, so that somebody who don't know how they're gonna make it, and you saying, "Hey, listen, me too."
Right.
Because me too.
Been there.
Everybody's got a me too.
Absolutely.
And even though it has
Yes.
one meaning
Absolutely.
right now,
Right.
me too can manifest
That's
itself
right.
in
Yes, it
every
can.
category
That's
of your
right.
life. And the very thing that you may have some shame about is the very thing that God will use to
Amen.
release not only other people and bless them, but then he'll also use it for somebody to bless you.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yes.
but you don't see
Yes.
it when you're in it.
And then
don't
let
see
me
it when
let
you're
me
in
say
it
this.
at all.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go
No,
on,
no,
but you took me someplace
Preach.
special. You took me someplace special.
She's like, I can relate to
Listen,
Let me say this
but
to you.
people need to know.
They do.
I think
They
in that
do.
situation, I really have to give Sherice a lot of credit because, you know, I'm the big bad man, woof, woof, woof. You know, hey, we can move on, we can do this. But I know with her, she has a girlfriend, you know, it's a more tender situation. But I can remember the day I came to her and I said to her, and I said to myself, I'm just going to say it like this, just to see, you know, what reaction I get. I said to her, hey, we need to let this go. And so I was expecting her to go, because we've had conversations over the last year about the situation. And I was expecting that, well, and she was like, you're right, you know. And I was like, you know, to give up all that.
Right. Don't you change your mind?
Let's get this thing done.
Make sure that you cry right now.
Right. You know, because you know, I think, you know, once I knew that she was on board, it just emboldened me to just move forward with that thing and just get everything done. Because if I had to fight her, or if there was not a fight, but you know, if I had to make sure that she was comfortable, then I think it just would. So, you know, I think, you know, as a man, you know, I never needed Sherice to be my cheerleader per se, but I always needed her right there beside me. You know, right there beside me to, you know. Sometimes I don't even need her to say anything. Just be there. Because I'll figure it out. I know, you know what I mean? I don't, sometimes, you know, you get too many voices in your head, you don't know what to do, but sometimes just having somebody there with you and having a strong woman there with you makes all the difference in the world.
Sherice, I want you to speak on what he just said.
Okay.
But I just want to piggyback on that a little bit. I used to do a show called The Man Whisperer, and I'll bring it back. But it was really having these kind of conversations where women can hear the man's perspective.
Right.
And what your husband just said is something that a lot of women struggle with, myself included, but I've heard it enough that I know it's true. We think we have to do very specific things.
True.
I can tell you, so many men have said, just be there.
Yes.
It's not about all this all the
Right.
time, or just bring me a glass of water, just something small.
Right.
Say, hey, I see you trying, I got you. But is that something that you had to learn, or?
I do think that, and you spoke about Tammy Franklin, so we all have a girlfriend's prayer group, a sister's prayer group. And we kind of have that accountability with each other. And I remember even talking with her and kind of sharing, okay, how do I be there, be his helpmate, be his rib, that side that you're supposed to be there just to be alongside him. And she says, sometimes, sis, you don't even have to say anything. Just be there with him and let him know that you love him. Let him know that, you know, you're his biggest supporter. And, you know, anything that happens, you're there for, you know, you're there. When you make those vows, we always think about that covenant that we make, and it's with that person, but the covenant is with God first. And it kind of goes back to what he was saying. I love God, so I know when I made that covenant with both of them, I made that, and we're together. So we have to make sure that we're supportive through the good and the bad, because there's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad. And it's funny that he spoke along the girlfriends and you know, more concerned about how I was feeling about the situation and
Yeah.
what perception was going to look like
Which
because
can
of the situation.
it can bound you up.
And it could bound you up. But do you know that God had given me a peace? I remember driving down 35, and He had given me a peace. He said, it's okay. He said, and it's okay to let it go. I think I came home and shared that with him. I said, God said, you keep holding on to these things that I'm trying to get you to release. He said, I cannot bless you unless you let go of the burden that's holding you down. And I remember coming back sharing that with him. And I just was like, okay. I mean, when I tell you the peace that came over, it was like, okay, I was able to share with our children and, you know, get a response that was like, oh, okay, Mom. You know, and you're expecting to hear from them, what do you mean? Now, our son, once again, was our one that was a little bit, you know, not on board. But that's because this is all he knew. You know, when you've grown up and this is a home you've grown up in, you know, you don't see yourself ever seeing yourself any other place. But when I start speaking about, you know what, we can do this, the possibilities of what we can do now. And he was like, okay, I see it. But we have to trust God in the process. And that was the whole thing. I kept hearing that voice just saying, trust me in the process.
That's so good.
Because I remember telling Tim, I'm just not sleeping. I'm not comfortable. I'm just not sleeping.
You didn't have peace.
I didn't have peace.
You could have a bunch of stuff and
You
no
can have a
peace.
whole bunch of stuff and no peace. I'd rather have the peace. To be quite honest with you, I honestly would rather have the peace.
But a lot of times you don't know that until you know what the other side looks like.
Very true.
You always covet what you don't have.
That's right.
And then you have it and you realize, and then it's still not satisfying. So we
Right.
got all this,
Right.
and it's still not
It's
enough.
still not
and it's
enough.
never enough.
No.
And then the carrot always gets moved, and so you're constantly
Right.
chasing it, right?
So true.
But if you have peace,
Yes.
it doesn't even matter what your circumstances
So
are.
true. So very
That
true.
is so good.
So very true.
So, you know, I ask everybody who comes on the show, so I'm going to ask you guys individually and then as a couple,
Yeah.
what is your superpower?
Oh my goodness. I'll let you go first while I give that a little thought.
Look, I there's no doubt I am nothing without God, you know, so my faith in God, I believe, is my superpower because, you know, my second year in the league, I got an 11-inch scar on my knee right here from when I tore my knee up, and I walked around on crutches, and I can remember one time I said I didn't need the crutches, so let me make it to the bathroom without the crutches. Didn't make it. I failed. You know, and I have a habit now using God as a crutch because I know without Him I'm going to fail. I'm going to fall. You know, so why even do it? Just use God all the time. And I think, you know, my ability to be able to rely on my faith at all times literally puts me in the right position, I think, to be able to do what God wants me to do.
That's good.
And I think mine would be the same. I think mine comes from really being in God's Word. I should say my refuge and my safe place is studying His Word. I am a leader at Bible Study Fellowship, and I remember being asked to come to be a leader, and I thought, I'm not ready for that. Why are y'all asking me to become a leader? And they pray over people before they even come to you with this request. So they know they've heard from God before they even reach out to you. And I thought, I've been through some things. I lost my brother 2 years ago at the age of 48 to a sudden heart attack. And I thought, just my world ending, you know, just thinking, Lord, how could that possibly happen? But we were doing the study of John at the time, and I remember just being in the Word and studying John, and each line on the page just ministering to me. Tears flowing at the same time. My kids would come in the room, and they're, what are you doing? I'm doing my lesson, but just in tears. But the process of the healing was coming, and I'm trusting God, just trusting Him where you are right now. It may not be good, and that wasn't saying the pain wasn't going away. It was day by day by day. I was able to get out of the bed, lift my head up, and keep going because I thought, do I deserve that? I think when you lose someone that's extremely close to you, you feel like it's unfair for your life to continue on, and theirs has ended. And I was stuck there for a minute, but I just say, trusting God, being in His Word, I would say that's where my superpower definitely relies on. And of course, I think, you know, my marriage. because you hear so many things about what's going on in the world with marriage, and it's not taken as like it's a priority anymore. It's not looked upon as being, and I told you about Off the Field Players Wives Association. There is an 85% divorce rate in the NFL, and it's even more as Christians. And we as Christians, that means marriage should, you would think that the percentage wouldn't be that high. But like you guys were talking earlier, the devil is busy. And I know that our superpower has to come together. That's the only way we can be powerful is together. So even doing events like we're doing right now with Big Brother, Big Sister, even my Super Bowl fashion show, I have all the husbands come and walk with the wives down the runway at the end of the finale, so you can show the unity. Our country is so divided right now, and if we can somehow become one and united, we can be so powerful. And I think that's where my power comes from, truly.
I love it. Before we go, you mentioned Off the Field,
Yes.
right? And that's what you do with the wives.
Yes.
But what was life like for you guys when you were finally off the field? Because I know that changes the dynamics. And I've heard a lot about how that
the transition of it.
Yeah,
definitely.
Eddie George and Taj talked about
they're good friends.
how challenging that transition was.
Definitely.
How was that?
Well, I mean, for me, initially, after playing 17 years in the NFL, 27 years of football, it was weird. It was strange. I can remember my first year out, I was doing Fox Sports Net, doing Thursday night commentating, and it was the first year the NFL was doing the Thursday night football games. And just so happened the Raiders were playing the Patriots. And now my last year in the league was with Tampa Bay, it wasn't even with the Raiders. But when the Raiders came out the locker room, I broke out in a cold sweat.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't move, I couldn't talk. I'm sitting literally on the set. And they're thinking I'm having a heart attack or something because I'm, and I literally can't talk. And finally he was like, well, we're going to call 911 if you don't say anything. And I was able to shake it off. But I had to literally get up and walk around the studio and tell myself, you retired, it's okay.
It's okay.
But, mentally I couldn't, And
Was that a panic attack?
You know what? I never looked at it as that, but probably it was a panic attack. But, it was over pretty quickly. But, and I was one of the lucky ones. I was one of the ones who got a chance to stand up at the mic and say, hey, today, I retired. But still, I went through that. So yeah, it's tough. No doubt about it. The transition is tough. But for me, being home was not a tough thing at all. I always looked at myself as being a homebody. So I really wasn't concerned about being home more.
Yeah.
Well, with you guys and your 4 kids, and now with you being chairs of the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, I think, or the big event, the
gala, Black Tie Gala.
We'll be at it. And so look, so go to bbbstx.org. That's bbbstx.org if you want to get involved, and if you want to experience what a life full of testimonies,
Amen.
what it can do to literally change another child's life. We all have stories.
Yes, we do.
I'm really, really grateful that you all shared yours.
Thank you.
And I'm excited about your new testimony.
Absolutely.
As you continue to walk in your superpower.
Thank you.
And I just love how God allows those moments of vulnerability to really become something that's valuable and that really help us go to the next level. Because we're free. We're free in our story.
That's right.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you'll join us at the gala, the Browns.
Yes, we will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you, Tia.
I'm your girl, Dia Direct. This has been the SuperPowHer podcast. Yes, we're fly women, and the men that love us do what? Testify. That's what we just did. Bye, y'all.